So for you, if we were to make this super practical for people, let's say they're in graduate school, they're in a doctoral program, what are some things that they can do right now today to help them be successful in graduate school? What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome if it's your first time here. This is Phil's Guide to PsyD. This channel is dedicated to all things psychology, wellness, and graduate school. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Dr. Lucia Juarez. She is a PhD holder, a certified life and academic coach. The reason that I have her on here today is because so much of graduate school is all about how to get into graduate school, and there's not a lot of discussion about how to get through graduate school, how to survive graduate school, how to get through your research, your dissertation, your thesis, how to get through all of the clinical practicum sites and the presentations and the exams, and so much that graduate school has to offer. And if you were to look online right now, there are a lot of students leaving PhD programs, PsyD programs in the middle of the program. After 1 year, after 2 years, after 3 years, there's just more and more students who are not completing their doctorate. And there's a number of reasons for that. And if we're going to talk about how to get into graduate school, we definitely need to talk about how to actually get through it and how to help students to get through it and how programs should help students to get through it. So I think this is a really valuable conversation. If you have not already, please subscribe to the channel. You can like and share this video. If you want more behind the scenes, you can always become a member by joining our YouTube channel. And without further ado, we will just jump right into the interview. All right, Dr. Lucia, it is so good to meet you, to see you. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited to be here today, Phil.
Yeah, I'm really excited as well. I was kind of going through your background, and you have experience in architecture, academia, coaching. So you have a diverse range of experiences that I think is really crucial because, a lot of times I get questions from students about how to get into graduate school, but then also what about how to survive graduate school, how to stay in graduate school, how to actually get the degree. And so I think your story is going to help us to find those answers today. So I'm super excited to get into it. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your background and how you got started in terms of what you're doing today?
No, not at all. And when you were saying about surviving grad school, I was thinking, because we don't want just to survive, we want to thrive, right?
That's right.
So I really want to share about some strategies that I managed to put in place, not just for me, but for my clients now as well, because I don't think it's fair to say that we want just to survive a degree that is so important for us. When you make that decision, it's because it's a big thing. About me, well, as you say, I'm an architect. I became an architect more than 20 years ago back in Argentina, where I'm from. So you can tell from my accent, although I live in the UK, I'm not from here. And I did my degree as an architect. And even when I was as an undergraduate student, I was very curious about architectural history and a little bit of teaching. So I was doing some research assistant and teaching assistant work, like for free. But I was helping in the department in my university. And I got a scholarship to do a master's degree in heritage conservation in Spain. Soon after I finished my degree, which I've loved. I lived in Spain for a few years as well.
Wow.
Few years after that, I got another scholarship to do my PhD here in the UK. Of course, I'm making this a little bit short. Many years in the middle. But
Yeah.
what was important for me is I be having this teaching experience. When I finished my PhD, I was tutoring in Edinburgh University. So there was some things that really got my attention. I realized that when you give a mark to the students at the grades, it wasn't reflecting how well they were in the topic. So, for example, I was teaching architectural history, and always remember two students. One who didn't pass. She was good in the classes. And when I asked her, like, what happened, she said, I fell asleep, Phil.
Oh.
So without judgment, because in my head I was like, what?
Yeah.
How can you fall asleep in an assessment?
Mm-hmm.
And she said in a one-on-one that she was under depression. She was taking a medication with a new doses that she was trying to adapt, and she was just too dizzy, too tired, and she fell asleep. That's one thing. So I would like to come back to this idea later. And then I have another student who was very good. He knew a lot about the topic, but when he was writing his essay, the mark was very low because it was a bit disorganized, like a big introduction. You can tell he spent a lot of time working in the introduction. The conclusion was like one line, and he forgot the the bibliography list and some reference in there, so he got a very low mark. But I thought all these things were very unfair and they weren't reflecting how well they were doing. But also, for me, it was a reflection that academic performance wasn't just about how much they knew about the topic. So after this, I decided that as a tutor, I will spend more time in helping them to be a little bit more open to talk, and also I spend a little bit of the delivery time in talking about the structure, like how to give a space for the idea to develop. Because when I did my PhD, something that I really value from my supervisor was the first year he outlined with me my whole thesis. So the first year we were designing together how it's going to look like in terms of the index by the time that we finished. And that was so useful because it was saying like kind of the proportion, how many words for the introduction, for the conclusion, for this topic, the idea of having one idea and the evidence and the reference every time that you mention something. So I was sharing them with them. I made like a checking list. And at the end of the year, my cohort had the highest grades. Everyone passed. So I realized it wasn't about the delivering of the content what make the difference. It was some other kind of support that it was more related with the tools. And to be honest, I realized that I enjoy more helping them with these kind of things rather than me teaching the topic. So what happened next? COVID came. Classes stopped. The university wasn't sure what to do, go online or not. And when it stopped, I thought, I want to make a change. I don't want to go back to be an architect. I don't want to be a professor. I don't want to be teaching. I want to help students. And I wasn't sure how. And but because something happened at that time as well, that it was like a kind of inspiration for me to do something related with my PhD. That that it's very common to have this idea like I'm not good enough, or I'm not academic in math. I don't know, is my thesis good enough, whatever. And I received an email saying that my thesis got like a nomination for my contribution to industrial heritage. That was my topic. So I thought, oh, I love this. I really want to put these things together without thinking I'm an architect. I'm not an architect. I'm a PhD, but I don't want to be a professor. And I always remember, Phil, I have my thesis around somewhere here, like it's like a blog, and I always remember holding it and thinking I could have done that in less time, less suffering, fewer tears, like 100%. So it's when I decided I want to do something like that. And I didn't know that academic coaching was a thing. So I started to do some research, and I found, and because we're coming from academia, we like certifications, isn't it? We like the paper validating things that maybe we know. So I did my certification as a life coach first, and then with extra modules, I did my certification for an academic coach, and I love it. I think I found like I don't mind not being an architect anymore. I don't miss any of the other things. I feel like that's my mission now. I'm so grateful. I love doing this.
Ah, that is so wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Lucia, for taking us through your journey and all of the different chapters of your life that like led you to this moment, right? And yeah, I think it's really special because I feel like when I was looking into doctoral programs, I don't feel like any type of advice could really prepare you for doctoral programs. It's like people can tell you, okay, you need a steady, balanced lifestyle, thesis, dissertation, but you don't really know what it's like to be a doctoral student until you're actually in the PhD program or the PsyD program. And it kind of blows me away that like once you get into graduate school, it feels like there's so much that you didn't know that you didn't know. And I think one of the things for me, like going to graduate school, there were so many things that I learned that I was like, wow, I wish someone had told me about this earlier, or I wish in some way that I could have experienced this advice or this guidance in a way to prepare me for what I'm going through right now. And so for you, is there one myth about doing a PhD that you wish someone had maybe told you about earlier on before you actually got into that doctoral program?
Yes. To be honest, I have my top three, but I'll go for the number one, which is working harder. Working hard is going to get you there, because that's the myth that I grab, thinking that's the thing, that's what I need to do to go through this, until that really affect my health, my personal life. So I learned in a hard way that that's not necessarily true. By the contrary, I think sometimes we just need to slow down to go faster. But I don't know. There was one episode where you were talking with your sister about this idea of working harder that usually leads you to burnout. That in academia we use it as a badge of honor, and it's not like that. And I know that things are changing. I think that was more like an old-fashioned thing. Still, you will see it, and I think we tend to normalize that in the academic world, which is not healthy. It's not good at all.
No, yeah, I can relate to that so much because I feel like when I got into graduate school, it very much the culture was like work hard, work hard, work hard. And I would see my professors working hard. I would see my practicum seminar leaders working hard. I would see a lot of people who I respected who were burnt out. And in my mind, I was like, oh, this is the expectation. This is just what graduate school is. Graduate school is burning out, essentially. And and that's just not the way that it needs to be. But I feel like so much of whether it's the culture in the school, what the professors are mirroring back to the students, like the systemic institutional issues of like burnout culture, you get all of those messages from so many different areas that you're like, oh, okay, I guess this is what I have to do too. And I appreciate what you're sharing, that it's not about working harder, but really working smarter, right? And I get so many questions from people who will say like, because I think on social media, you can glamorize going to a doctoral program, being a PhD student, and there's not a lot of social media pages that talk about the difficult times and the struggle and the suffering. And so I always try and highlight that in videos or messages that I do, because I want people to kind of get the complete picture. And so, for you going through your PhD, you kind of talked about it a little bit, but what would you say was the toughest maybe season for you of being a PhD student, and how did you get through it?
Well, the hardest part for me, like without no doubt, was when I had my first baby. He was born when I was in the middle of my PhD. I have to say, and I would like to go back something that you just said about the suffering. And I think there is a difference between being in a challenging situation, which in a PhD where you're facing so many new things all the time, you're doing things that you haven't done before, or they haven't done before at all, because that's part of your research. So there will be some things about the challenge, but the suffering, no, that's another story. So what was happening to me is, I was at the beginning, I was with some challenges. I was kind of okay. There was still some struggles, but for someone who is an international student, like I was, living in another country, speaking another language with another culture is challenging enough. But having a baby in that context with no family help around, everything seems like just too much. So there are two things that are challenging itself, like being a mom and doing a PhD, and putting that together is just too hard. It was too hard. I There was a time like I thought I was kind of managing, um, but it was very difficult to sustain it in the way. And I think that was the time where I just compromised my health just for pushing harder. And that's why at the video say, I know this is for sure. This is the myth. Please don't engage. Don't engage with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I think it's, that like that badge of honor that I think a lot of people who go into graduate school, they want to do well, and they're very conscientious about hard work.
Yeah.
And I just wish that there was a better, cultural aspect to graduate school, that professors could be just more intentional about self-care and taking care of yourself and balance. And, what an amazing testament for you to be able to go through that, with your family, and to be able to also showcase to other people that it's possible, like you can have kids, you can be married, you can be in a relationship, you can have other interests outside of graduate school and still be like a complete person. You can still do it. Because I think sometimes we don't get those messages.
You know what? You said a couple of things. That one is about that family life. I think for me it's so important that we can understand that we have only one life. And the PhD, your doctorate study, your master's, your undergraduate degree, everything is part of that life. Your family, your friends. So it's just one life that we get to live. So it's good that we can enjoy it and live it fully, and not have, it's like the PhD is a separate life that you need to live on your own, isolated, suffering, and that's not true. And something that I also say about family, one of my most recent clients, she just finished like yesterday her PhD, and she has three girls. The youngest is 1 month old, Phil. So she said, like, she said, this is possible because it's not about, it's just by understanding how you work, your strategies, and making the most of the time that you have available. it's not about having the full day. Sometimes you will be amazed how a mom can have so much done compared with a student who doesn't have kids. And it's because we value sometimes that time because we don't have as much, so you want to take most of it. And and I always think like it was for me. Like I wish my kids, they're still a little bit little, but I wish they admire this idea of doing the PhD, or at least, you know what was important for me when I was having this baby and I was struggling. I thought I want them to see that I'm able to finish something that I started, but not just for finishing something I started because I'm, but because I care. And the PhD was very important for me, and it was a very personal challenge as well, doing in another language, uh, doing a research which I was passionate about, although the challenges, of course, but still finding that passion in it. And that's so important as well.
Yeah. You know, kind of going back to that concept that you mentioned about, like, it's one thing to work hard, but we want to work smart, and kind of going through your experiences, you built a system to essentially help students navigate the academic challenges of a doctoral program. And it's the smart PhD system. And I would love for you to talk about that, because at the end of the day, like, people need a roadmap to navigate all of the difficulties and the struggles of what the PhD program is going to bring them. And I feel like you were able to structure something in a way that was so very much, it made sense, it was logical, and it was kind of easy to implement. So do you mind talking a little bit about
No,
that?
I would love to talk about that. But before I jump into that, I would like to share with you a little bit of how deep was my struggle. And that's why I know this work. So what happened to me is, in that time that I was really working too hard, and I mentioned before, I was compromising my health. So, and this is very important to bring it here before I speak about this coaching framework, because it's what I wanted to make sure anybody doing a PhD or any doctoral studies go through, or even think about pushing that hard. Because, to be honest, there was a point that I thought I was nailing it because I thought I was having some kind of balance family life, because I was with my kid, I was with my husband, and then they went to bed and I was working until super late, and I was making some progress. Oh, this is working, until it didn't. So I wasn't sleeping. I was like a zombie during the day, trying to work hard during the night because the day wasn't enough. Uh, I pushed so hard that really affected my health. So it's very important for me, before start talking about the smart PhD, is we need to find a way to avoid all these things, because it happened. It happened to me, and I know it happened to other students. Pushing too hard. I have a sciatica, I have a tendinitis, but it wasn't like, well, it's a medical condition or whatever. It's so hard for a mom not be able to play with your baby. And also it was affecting my progress. So I thought, and that's why important to say what you were saying at the beginning about this myth. I thought I was fine doing that. So what made the difference for me was I went too deep into that I needed to go to the doctor. And when I got to the doctor said, Lucia, you need to take 2 or 3 weeks off. I was like, what? I'm trying to use every minute uh, to work on my PhD. And he said, you need to have a break. You need to start doing Pilates. You need to take care of yourself. I was also having migraines, which I still have sometimes, but at that time was so bad. So that's when I wanted to make sure to anyone listening to pay attention. There are some flags that you cannot ignore. So what happened to me is I realized at that point that I really needed my mind and my body in order to get to the final line if I wanted to finish the PhD. So it wasn't working harder. So when I'm saying this, that would be the S from the SMART PhD, that is the self-care. It's so important. So for what happened to me is when I decided to be a coach, and in the experience that I have, I could see that the self-care was important, but there was other things that were coming um, as things that the students were sharing with me. And in 2022, I think it was, I did like a series of how to mini trainings to help students in the different things that I was listening. But also, they were the same, like similar issues that I have, like self-care, confidence, imposter syndrome, um, getting, understand how to get or setting goals, planning, motivation. There were so many topics that everyone was having challenges around this, and it was very similar to the ones that I have. And when I managed to find a way around and finish my dissertation on time, it was mainly because the first, like, top one priority was my self-care. I don't think I wouldn't be able to finish if I wouldn't take care of this. Um, but what was happening is for in the way that the smart PhD was created is after listening to these things, and when I was doing this training, I think it was the night that I delivered this training about goal settings for success or something like that for your PhD, and I couldn't sleep. So I went downstairs to warm some milk, and sometimes it's like a reflection moment as well. And I was thinking what I can do to help students to remember what are the important things, for example, like self-care. And I thought about two things that I was talking about that night. One was about setting goals. I don't know if you know this, the SMART goals strategy. Have you ever used it, Phil? Yeah. So I love it because I like the idea of an acronym, this idea of being specific, measurable. So that like every letter would mean something. You will. I still use that. I don't necessarily use that page printed when I put the things, but it's in my head every time that I have a goal. I think, is this achievable? When is this specific enough? So I have incorporated that. So I thought I would like to create something similar. And there was something else that came to my mind that I was talking about that time about goals. Um, it's something that James Clear said about. For me, it's very important the goals, and that's why I use the smart goal setting strategy. But he says, don't focus on the goals because it's not about the goal because winners and losers have the same goal. So what makes the difference to be that winner? And he says is the system there, for example, I don't know, an athlete puts in place in order to get there to the final line. And that really resonates with me, my story when I was doing it, and this idea that was working with the students, like in a similar way, or this idea of being a whole because it's like a system. And for me, so I started playing around with the letters and see, and I like the idea of the smart. So I thought the S is for self-care. That's I mentioned it so many times already. I already feel that it's so important. The M for mindset, because that was a big thing for me as well, around being more positive about your thoughts, the things that you say to yourself, taming the imposter syndrome or things like that, working around goals that are attainable, the reflection, the time management that is very linked to task management as well, planning and priorities, habits and routines, and the D is for drive or motivation. But why I like talking about system, because what was happening to me is because I was so tired, I couldn't focus. When you cannot focus, you cannot be productive. If you're not productive, you feel bad about yourself. So that affects your mindset, and that will affect your motivation. Sometimes, for example, I tend to be a motivated person. I love that my project when I was doing my, but I could be very motivated, sit to work. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. So it's the combination of all these things. And to be honest, Phil, until now, so it's been almost 3 years since I created this system. Every person I hear about 70 students from different degrees, not just PhD students, and any issue that, like I was saying, 70 per quarter. So when I listen to students, anything that they will say about any struggle would go around these 8 categories, like over and over. We will have AI issues, like we have so many things, but I know that, and also I know that it's so effective that also when PhD students finish working with me, they're also better prepared for work or industry, because when you manage all the things, you are more productive, you have developed a better self-awareness of yourself. So it says the smart PhD, so people really connected with PhD students, but to be honest, you can apply to anything. I apply for myself, although I finished my PhD as well.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Dr. Lucia, that was incredible. I'm there's so many thoughts kind of going through my head because as you were talking, I was really thinking about this aspect of presence. And, I know in the book Atomic Habits, it talks about, like you mentioned, like this ruthless intentionality to focus on the process and not the outcome, not the
Yeah.
goals, not the end goal, but really what does the day-to-day look like for you? What is the process? Finding meaning and falling in love with just the process and being really rooted in the present moment. And I appreciate you kind of going through all of the terms of what smart PhD really means and what it looks like. And as you were kind of talking about, I was also kind of thinking about, like, for example, we talked about like burnout earlier, and I feel like a lot of students definitely get this mindset that, like, again, like burnout is just expected, right? And I think I've seen burnout be connected to a lot of lack of time management. And so you don't know how much time to spend on one thing, like your dissertation or your research. So then you spend too much time on it, but you don't spend enough time on studying for the exam or preparing for the presentation. And then you're not prepared for your clinical practice. And then all of a sudden you feel like you're just trying to keep up with everything else and you're juggling so much. And so what do you feel like it's one mistake that students make specifically with time management and hopefully like trying to prevent burnout from happening?
So there are a few things there, because I always think, like, we talk a lot about time management because it's an important thing. If you think about it, everything we do takes time. Even if I drink the water, I go to the toilet, I write an email, I read, I write, I have a chat, I send a text, everything takes time. So, and as I said at the beginning, when you are in your doctoral studies and you are doing most of the time things that you haven't done before, it's very difficult to know how long. The other thing, and we tend to do a lot in studies, is the it's called productive procrastination. Do you know what is that?
Oh, I think I've
So
heard of this. Yeah.
yeah, so, and I did this a lot. So, for example, I'll say, well, I need to write about chapter 2 is going to be about this topic. And you read a little bit here, you open a window, you read the paper here, you look there. Like, at the end of the day, you haven't done, so you were busy. You were doing something that it seems productive because it was related to, it was interested, it was connected somehow, but it wasn't what you needed. It wasn't a priority. It wasn't a strategy. So it's very important. And that's why I gave you this example of this client having 3 babies. She doesn't have time to procrastinate and go around. She really needed to focus what it really needs to be done. So it happens in the burnout that also there is a sense of overwhelming when we have so much and there is so much that you don't know what to do. And I share with you a strategy that I use with my clients. It comes from a story that I took my son to the nutritionist because he wasn't eating much. And when I get there, she said, don't put too much in his plate because he will feel overwhelmed and won't eat anything at all. So this is exactly what happened with the students. When you were talking about that presentation, doing this, doing that, they feel overwhelmed. They try to do as much as they can without any strategy. And then they ended up working harder without having a product of what they were materializing what they wanted to do. And also in that burnout, there is that feeling of frustration as well. It's not just not doing the thing. You cannot do the thing and be okay and not be burnout either. So there is like a mix of things. So going to this idea of that plate, I don't know in America, but in the UK, it's very common to say, I have too much on my plate. So when a student say, I have too much on my plate, that can be, so if we want to prevent burnout, looking at that plate is very important. So we'll say, sometimes I ask, like, can you draw like your plate and let's put everything you have in it. So that presentation that you were saying, that chapter, the reading, trying to go to the gym, or any other thing that is important for you right now. And then you observe that. I asked, like, maybe to grab a highlighter or something and think about what are the priorities. So what the nutritionist said to me at that time was, just put the minimum. Make sure that you have the proteins, vegetables, like just an amount. If you feel he's hungry, he can eat more later or at a snack, but make sure he eats the essentials. So it's the same idea here. So, and so what I do is I ask them to what are the priorities for them. And sometimes when the project is too deep, because that's the other thing, we can be working in a research project forever, isn't it? Like, sometimes it's difficult to stop. So what is the minimum that you can do for this chapter to have enough shape, valid enough? So, and then you can think about the time that you might need. So if we go back to this idea of that SMART goal, you can think about the strategy. Is this achievable or no? And what's the time that you have available? So I think combining this with some techniques, it helped me it helped me a lot, the Pomodoro technique, when I was doing my own PhD, although I did adjust it because I found that when I was reading, I had my alarm out 25 minutes and I didn't finish what I was reading. I got very upset. So, but it was good to know how long it take, and and everyone has like a different focus span. So, but the majority would be okay between 20, 40 minutes. So if you can kind of understand what you can do when you have your priorities, is the best way to start thinking about your time management. At the end of the day, it's a question of decision. Like, what do you need to do? And that's why important your priorities. When do you want to do it? When is the best time as well? Do you know what happened very often with my clients? I feel, for example, when we talk about time management, um, let's say the client needs to write a chapter, and I will ask, when do you feel you are more productive in your writing? When do you think you are more focused to be working in your writing? And they would say, for example, this is very common. I hear this so many times. They would say, for example, first thing in the morning. And when I ask, what do you do first thing in the morning? The majority will say, I check my emails. So the time management is not just putting the time to a task, it's understanding how do you work best. So let's say, for example, you want to write and you know you write better in the morning, so it's better to write in the morning. And that's the way that you are going to learn to use your time, manage your time and your task and your energy all together, knowing yourself that everyone is different. So the same, like some people really like doing exercise and they feel they can focus more if they do exercise before a specific task. Others prefer to go in the evening as a more relaxing and a reward thing after. So time management it has to be more personalized, but there are some things that are very important to understand, and most of the things will go to understanding the priority. Is this achievable? What's the most important thing that I need to do today?
Wow. As you were talking too, I love the fact that you gave so many good practicals of how to kind of figure out that time management piece. And like you talked about, like that is also what kind of helps to regulate that stress. And then also kind of all of these things are connected together, right? So if you can figure out the time management, hopefully you can reduce burnout. Hopefully now you're taking care of yourself because maybe you have more time for yourself and you can actually go into more self-care. I'd love for us to also talk about mindset a little bit more specifically because, in the therapy space, there's cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Where it's helping you with your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, and your behavior. And there's a lot of research that shows that, if you believe something about yourself, if you believe that you're not good enough or that you're a failure, you're more likely to actually exhibit a lot of those maybe negative behaviors, not trust yourself, not do well. And so I have so many students who talk about graduate school and they talk about comparing themselves to other people who are doing much better than they are, at least from what they can see. And, there's also that self-critical voice that starts to come out of like, I'm not good enough. My research director gave me really negative feedback. My practicum seminar clinical leader gave me negative feedback. Everywhere I go, I get this negative feedback. And then now I have this critical inner voice that keeps saying that I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And I've seen students, cripple under that type of pressure. And so how would you help a student in that situation?
Thanks for sharing that, Phil, because I think it's a common thing, and to be honest, it's something that it did affect me quite a lot because I wasn't feeling academic enough. My English was never enough, and it's something something funny happens. It's like, for example, your supervisor will say, oh, you're doing very good at this, very good at this, but they say one bad comment and you grab it and you go on and on and on and on in your head. You forget about everything positive he could possibly say. So I'll go back to this idea because at some point it's like a decision to grab that thought or not. But I always like remember it. Like for me as well, we all were born enough. There is no person who is not enough. It's just a feeling. And if it's a feeling, it's coming from a thought. And every thought can be challenged. So it's very important that you can understand that and you can at least reframe it. It's not the same saying, I'm not good enough, that I'm feeling I'm not good enough. Or I'm feeling I'm not good enough because my supervisor said this negative comment. So you start like taking distance about this. It's not that it was like a feeling because someone said. Then in that challenging your thought, you can say things like, is this actually true? I am actually not enough. Because as I said, we tend to grab this idea. So what you do in your head, you might know this, we look for the evidence. So we look not for just that comment the supervisor said. You look for everything your parents said, your friends ever said, like anything anyone said about, and you think, yeah, it's right, I'm not good enough. But if you decided to be it in a positive way, for example, if I'm feeling I'm not good enough, I'm not academic enough, my English is not enough, in my case was a big thing. What about, I think about the situations where I did good. I realized that it was more than good. And I have a recognition, someone said something. And you know what the most important thing? I sometimes I ask my clients, will you say that to a friend, like you're not good enough? And 100% the answer is no, I wouldn't. So why are we so hard with ourselves? So if you put this in perspective, you can think. So imagine you feel, if you are your best friend, what do you think you will say to you? If you are saying, I don't know, Nick, I'm not good enough, what do you think he will say to you?
You have good qualities. You can do it. I feel like it would be encouraging statements about what I could do.
Why we don't say that to us? Why we are not our best friends? So, and when you realize, you just put things in perspective, you start feeling different. It's so important to make that distinction and make that challenge to the thoughts. It's like, I am really going to believe everything I'm saying in my head, or as a researcher, in the same way we do, like we look for evidence. Well, we don't go and look for the evidence that will challenge that thought. And when you were good, when you did something good in your studies, good with your friend, with someone in your family, it is a choice at the end of the day. The thing is, we think we don't have that choice until that thought are started to be challenged. I think it's a practice as well. To be honest, like I'm still suffer from imposter, and I need to do this exercise myself. Is there some things the same with the things that we were talking about, the smart PhD system? We need to practice. There will be different things. So what is self-care for you when you're doing the PhD? Maybe something different in another time of your life. The mindset issues that you might have in a point, it might be different in another situations. What is an achievable goal? It will depend so much on your circumstances that it can be different now or next week or last week. There are no 2 days that are the same. And that's good as well. So it's important to reflect on these things, because it will affect, you were saying that at the beginning, and the things that you can do. And I think what usually happens when you start to be more productive as well, when you put these things in place, is you start building confidence and you start trusting yourself. So I'll give an example that happened to me quite a lot, that affected my confidence, because it was so hard, and it's very common for PhD students. Because, as I said, we were talking about the beginning field, about doing these things that we don't know and take longer. So let's imagine you're saying, today I'm going to do this, but you don't. The day is finishing and you haven't done it. And then tomorrow the same thing. And then the other day the same thing. Week by week by week. You never complete what you said. So that affects your trust in yourself. And that's why that confidence is affects so much in the academic world, because you are exposed to that new things all the time. Is difficult. So when you have something in place where you put a goal that you can achieve, that is around the priorities, that is aligned with your values, with the main thesis or whatever you're trying to accomplish, and you start doing it, you go to bed feeling productive, happy about yourself. That is building confidence. That brings more energy. That the whole thing, and that's again this idea of system. You see yourself in a different way, and most likely that self-talk changes, because you can see that you can do it. You trust yourself differently, because you say, I'm going to do this today, and you do it. And you say, I'm going to do this week this, and you do it. So you feel, I can do this, and I will do it. It's an amazing feeling.
Yeah. And I think it's an amazing way of then whenever you go into future situations where you're having a hard time, you can pull back in your memory bank and you can think of all of the times that you did it. You know, you did the hard thing, you turned in the assignment, you submitted the essay, you know, and pulling back from past experiences and past successes can then help you in your current situations too. And so I I guess that kind of leads into my next question, because in one of the systems, you talk about reflection. And I know we've kind of already discussed reflection a little bit, but what is, because I think it's one of those things where it's so important to kind of stay in the present moment, to focus on the daily task. But I do think there's an aspect where I've had students kind of journal throughout their graduate
Yeah.
program about their first year, their second year, their third year, their fourth year, things that they're learning. How important is reflection? Because I think there's a lot of people who will say it's not that important. Like,
Yeah.
what would you respond to that, or how would you respond?
Well, first of all, I totally understand, because I was like that. Like, who has time for reflection? Like, what are you talking about? It's so undervalued. But then you will realize, and listen to this, Phil. We might be one reflection away to a better life. So it's so important, because without that reflection, we don't adjust on time. We keep doing the same things, hoping there will be different results, and that doesn't work that way. So how do you know what you need if you don't have time and honestly, you don't need that much. Sometimes you need 5 minutes to know, for example, for the smart PhD, where do I need to put more attention now? Most of the time we just need more sleep, but we don't stop to think what is working, what is not working, what I can do differently for next time, next week, tomorrow. And sometimes in that reflection for a few minutes, it can be the answer that you were looking for years.
Yeah, it I think it's so fascinating when we talk about all of these different things, because it really is about, like, I feel like kind of utilizing and making small habits that over time, the more that you practice, the more that you feel like it'll become more natural. And in some ways, I feel like it's kind of like learning a new language. Like it's a little bit of a struggle, but the more that you practice, the more that you implement it, the easier that it becomes. And so for you, if we were to make this super practical for people, let's say they're in graduate school, they're in a doctoral program, what are some things that they can do right now today to help them be successful in graduate school?
So if we connect with reflection, putting aside a little bit of reflection can definitely help. So sometimes I recommend to have like a day. I usually do it Fridays, like a reflection Friday thing, 5-10 minutes can be more than enough. And if you don't believe me, put the alarm and you will see. You can grab a piece of paper and write what worked well this week, what didn't work, or if you want to be more positive, what I can do better next time. It can be a big change. Sometimes you can ask yourself from these things. Sometimes you say, oh, I need to change this, and this. But you can ask yourself, what's the minimum I can do? And that minimum step can really trigger bigger changes as well. In terms of the practical thing, something I still do now, and I'm trying to encourage my little sons to do the same, is preparing for tomorrow. So some people say a good day starts the night before. Preparation. So, for example, I try to leave my clothes for the next day. If I'm going to do exercise, I try to make all the things easier for me. I maybe sleep in the morning, so that really helps me. But even if you don't, I'll do as much as I can in the night before. It can be the clothes, things from breakfast, having my bag ready. The less I need to think, because that takes time as well, the better, the easier. And the easier I start my day, the better I feel with myself, because I feel more productive. Like everything I can do the night before will help. And other thing that is very easy, and I do all this all the time, with a post-it, write the 3 things that you want to achieve. Sometimes it's not like finish the thesis tomorrow, but always try to go to the minimum. It's so nice, because when you say, what's the minimum I can do? What is one thing that, for example, I still do this as well. So, for example, today I have a very busy day, but I know that I need to do something with my kids to go to sleep feeling happy and productive. It's not about work. It's about how I feel when I go to bed. Is doing something with them. We were playing cards. We made some cakes. That was enough for me, and that will be always something like that in my 3 things for the day. These things are very easy, and I promise you, feel it can make you feel different. You will be more productive. Sometimes we think we need to be a different person. We need to make big changes. And sometimes it's just one little thing that is going to start bringing a new energy, new thoughts. It works again. Don't forget that we are like a whole. And I think sometimes you were saying something about comparison and trying to be someone else. And something that happened to me when I was doing the PhD, I will always remember, like, because I was struggling with my baby, I have a colleague who brought and showed me this amazing Gantt chart. I don't know if you know Gantt chart. It's like, you can use it in an Excel. We use it as an architect for project management. So let's say you will start building a house from down to the roof. You will need, so the project is step by step how long you will take, and you need to finish this. It's like, how can I say, you cannot start painting the walls until the roof is finished. So there is a sequence of activities. So he brought and showed me He showed me to me his Gantt chart for his PhD. I was like, what? and and he said, well, you don't try, because we are all architects, so we are familiar with the tool. Well, you don't try knowing that I was struggling. And when he left, I was feeling so inadequate, like I cannot do this. What does it mean that that I will never be organized enough? So what I realized later, that you don't need to compare. Everyone is different. If you need to be organized, you will find your own way, but you need to listen to you. And that's why this reflection time is important, because everyone is different. You don't need the Gantt chart. I need my post-its. It's about finding your own way.
It really does, as we kind of come to a close, it really does make me think so much about the importance of mentorship. I think so many times in graduate school, I always felt like, okay, I have to do this all by myself. And just the value in having a really good research director, or having a good mentor, clinical supervisor, or having good friends and support systems, or having a coach. We think about like having a therapist, or having a life coach, or a health coach, or a personal trainer, but we don't often think about having someone like you in terms of what you're doing to help students. And it's just another thing that they could utilize to actually help them get to where they want to go in terms of some of this coaching and consulting. And so, Dr. Lucia, I have a few sort of rapid fire questions to ask you.
Uh-huh.
Let's say the first one is this. You have to fill in the blank. So you have a student that comes up to you and they say, or let's say just in general, there's a sentence that I want you to fill in the blank for. Graduate school doesn't have to be
that hard.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. And we can make it harder on ourselves, right?
Definitely. Yeah, always.
And what's a common piece of advice that students hear that you think is actually harmful or outdated?
I think we'll go back to this idea that you need to work harder. But I would like to mention something that you mentioned as well, around that you need to figure out everything by yourself, because that's not actually true. You don't do the PhD on your own. You have your supervisor, and if you, for example, if you have a coach, it's not that the coach will do the thesis for you. It's still your work. And also all the strategies that you can get from help from a coach, they're skills for life. So I've been helping sometimes students to get a job after finishing the PhD. And some people, because I also made a big change in my career, I have some people that approach me for helping them to do the same. And it's never the same with the students that have been working with me, because they have been working in all these priorities, the clarity, the self-care, time management, all these things that will really value for industry or an academic position. So it's no, if you have a psychologist, as you were mentioning as well, it's not that they will do the work for you. That's a misconception. You will still do the work, but you don't need to figure out everything out by yourself. And I see a lot of people masking, because like thinking that they need to show they are okay when they are not. And that is so harmful. As you say, it's up to them. We know that doing a PhD or PsyD or a master's even it can be challenging. So why we pretend everything is fine when it's not?
Yeah.
No.
It makes me think about, like early intervention, if for a first year student in the first semester, if they find themselves struggling, like they need to get help. They need to talk to their research director. They need to find a coach. They need to find a friend. They need to admit or acknowledge that, things are hard. And I think one of the first steps to getting help is to acknowledge what's happening. And so that's kind of what made me think of that as you were speaking about that specific topic. And Dr. Lucia, as we come to a close, I have one final question for you. I ask this question to all of my guests. Once again, thank you so much for all of the clarity and the information that you've provided for today. I think it's a lot of information, but it's good information because people can use some of these skill sets to actually help themselves through graduate school. But for you, when you're not busy taking care of yourself or your family or other people, what do you do for yourself in terms of your own self-care, either for wellness, for body, for mind, or for spirit?
I think it's great that you asked this question to everyone, because it's so important, because sometimes it's easier to talk about you should be doing this or that and then not applying it for yourself, isn't it? I do exercise every day. I do half an hour of something that's called eccentric. I love it because it's easier for me to put half an hour every day at home than maybe going to the gym every 3 months. I still go once to do some swimming, which I love. It's my time off from home as well. So it's not just physically, it's a mentally rest from the family. I do the very exchange therapies called balancing, which really helps you to give your balance, to balance your energy. And I do sometimes meditation. I had to confess, until a month ago, I was waking up at 6:30 and I used to do half an hour meditation before starting the day. But I was struggling with sleeping, so I decided to put priority for sleeping instead of the meditation, and then I do meditation when I feel, depending on the day and the rest of the day. And say that I want you to say sometimes it's very good to have routines and you don't need to think about it, so the important things. But I also want people to understand, because even with the meditation, I think I was pushing myself too hard, because sometimes I go to bed with the kids or whatever. I wanted to do it, and I thought I can do it in another time, and I will be fine as well. Sometimes we are we just push too hard, even if it's thinking that will be something healthy. Like, I need to go to the gym every day and do this as much. Well, it's good. Again, maybe reflecting a bit. This time, I need a little bit more of a sleep. But meditation is great. I love meditating.
It sounds like a very holistic, comprehensive wellness plan that you have for yourself. And so I'm so glad that we were able to have this conversation, Dr. Lucia. Once again, thank you so much. For students who are looking for additional help, how can they reach out to you? What are your kind of social media handles and things like that?
Well, in social media, I'm more active in LinkedIn than the others. But that happened to be as well. I put another priorities. I'm not as active as before, maybe once a week, but you can definitely DM me. What I think people can do is to go to my website, which is www.luciajuarez.com. So maybe because of the pronunciation, maybe I need to spell it, but what I would like people to maybe take the time. I created a quiz to understand where people are in this smart PhD, because something that I noticed a lot, when you were saying that people wanted more support. Sometimes they want it, but they cannot afford that. And I wanted to create something that would be free. People would they cannot say I don't have time, because it's actually 3 minutes. So if people want to go and do that, now in my website, there is a big red, orange button to take the quiz. And the good thing is, after 3-4 minutes, they will understand where in this smart PhD system they need more attention, and I'll give you a specific advice according to that. So I think they can, of course, contact me, but I don't want to feel that if like a big commitment from them. They can do this, and I would be happy if they can get anything from these 3 minutes.
Wonderful. I will leave down all of those links, definitely in the comment section below. But yeah, I'm super excited. You know, it's one of those things where I'm so glad that we connected, because there's a lot of information out there about how to get into graduate school, you know, your application, your CV, your resume, interviewing, all of that stuff. But there's just not a lot of information about how to get through graduate school and how to survive graduate school, and what do you do when in the middle, right? In the struggle, which is the longest process, you know?
Definitely, yeah.
And so how do you survive that longest process? And so thank you for sharing your insights today. And yeah, I really appreciate the time. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I love it. Thank you so much, Phil.